The Five Nights at Freddy's movie premiered to massive success, breaking the record for the best Halloween weekend box office of all time.
Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria is here to delight, dazzle, and entertain.
But with a very low-effort marketing campaign, poor early reviews from critics, and the fact that the studio released the movie on a streaming platform day one, the success was a bit of a surprise. The amount of money this movie raked in is really a testament to the loyalty of the Freddy Fazbear audience. And beyond that, the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise as a whole has become a huge commercial success, and the story behind it is actually really inspiring. Welcome to Bingeonomics. This is the rise of the Five Nights at Freddy's empire. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF, starts with this guy, Scott Cawthon. Born in Bell County, Texas, Scott Cawthon began his career in game development making self-funded Christian adventure games, which is a bit surprising for someone who would eventually find his success in the survival horror genre. He attended the Art Institute of Houston and would eventually work on religious animations in games. One was a game called Pilgrim's Progress, a JRPG-style game based on a religious allegory. He continued creating animations and games, and some of his creations even made it through the submission process for Steam Greenlight, where they underwent reviews for potential inclusion on the Steam platform, which is the biggest digital distribution platform for PC gaming. He developed other projects, including The Desolate Hope, a game set in a dystopian industrial landscape, as well as games like Sit and Survive and There Is No Pause Button. But it was always an uphill battle. These games never led to much success and barely made any money. Well into his 30s, right up until he created the original Five Nights at Freddy's, Scott was working as a cashier at Dollar General, where he had 3 bosses, all of whom were teenagers. Prior to that, he worked at Target in the backroom freezer unloading food. His family was struggling during this time, and he was working on these small games just to help pay the bills. But all of his games had been financial failures, and the latest failure would be the last straw, a game he created called Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, a construction and management game featuring anthropomorphic animals, with the player being a cute little beaver. Well, it was supposed to be cute. Critics felt differently. Scott had hoped that this time he created something that resonated with people, but unfortunately, most gamers overlooked his Christian-themed animal game, and those who did play it found it to be creepy. One particularly harsh review even criticized his character models as off-putting, likening them to terrifying animatronics. Scott felt defeated. Each time he launched a game in the past, he savored the brief excitement of observing people's reactions. But over the years, he found it increasingly difficult to persist. Family responsibilities grew, forcing him to juggle game creation with a full-time job and quality time with his kids. He wasn't as young as he used to be, and the luxury of dedicating days on end to game development had become a distant memory. He began questioning if he had wasted his life on a craft that never paid off for him.
What must I do to be saved?
At that moment, Scott decided to quit. It was time to grow up and face the facts. He would never succeed as a game developer. A low point came when Scott's life insurance policy was canceled when the insurance company caught wind to the fact that he had mentioned suicidal thoughts to his doctor. He said, quote, "It was that point I realized that not only did my life have no value, but now even my death had no value." According to Scott, he went before God once more and decided to make one more attempt at a game. And interestingly, this time the idea wasn't a Christian-themed one, but rather a horror game.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life.
Five Nights at Freddy's was released on August 8th, 2014, and it doubled down on those creepy animatronics, but this time, people loved it. No! This simple game, in which you play as a night shift security guard trying to survive a pack of murderous Chuck E. Cheese-style animatronics over the course of 5 nights, was a huge hit. Just 2 days after the game's release, a YouTuber named Yummy Mash shared his playthrough of Five Nights at Freddy's. He was among the first YouTubers to explore the game, and it appeared that his audience really enjoyed it. His video subsequently caught the eye of a young Markiplier, whose channel had around 2.7 million subscribers at the time. Markiplier Markiplier posted his own Let's Play video on August 12th, and it instantly became a massive success, amassing over 7 million views within its first month. Five Nights at Freddy's immediately became a sensation on the internet, spreading rapidly all across the world. Scott's perseverance had finally paid off. And when I say it paid off, I mean it paid off bigly. This little indie game would turn into a media franchise that would make so much money. In fact, you could say that FNAF is a money machine. As of 2023, the first 6 Five Nights at Freddy's games have sold over 4.74 million units on Steam, with the first game making up over 2 million of those sales. Those first 6 games have made over $33.5 million on Steam. Although some developers negotiate differently, generally speaking, Steam takes a 30% cut on sales made on their platform, with smaller percentages once games reach various sales thresholds. But even at 30%, with Scott Cawthon being the sole owner of the Five Nights franchise, he still took home 70% of that revenue. But that's just scratching the surface. The games kept coming out. There are currently 13 FNAF games, including Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which retailed for $39.99, a much higher price than previous games in the series. It sold 1.7 million copies. Another thing to note is the Five Nights mobile ports are also massively popular, with most of the main series ranked in the top paid iOS apps of all time. And eventually, by 2019, the games began being ported and sold on console, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox. Not only that, the franchise has expanded into other areas. 15 novels, one of which is a New York Times #1 bestseller, plus 11 graphic novels, and there's even a cookbook. Not to mention so much merchandise and apparel. Clothing, toys, plushies, collectibles, figurines, I mean, it's endless. Walk into a Walmart or a Hot Topic or a Target or Best Buy and you'll find Five Nights at Freddy's merch. And that's not even including the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which just murdered the box office. We'll talk about that in a bit, but the point is, when it comes to creating a truly marketable IP, Scott Cawthon knocked it out of the park. But the question is, why is that? Why does Five Nights at Freddy's print money? What's so special about it? Well, a few things. First off, the original game released at the perfect time, taking advantage of the popularity of YouTube gaming creators and Twitch streamers, which were still somewhat of a new thing. But specifically, it blazed the trail for games that were really perfect for content creators to make Let's Play videos about. Watching creators get scared drew audiences like nothing else, and FNAF carved out a big piece of that space. The marketing also stemmed directly from these Let's Play creators and streamers who desperately wanted new games that would make for good reaction style content, which would then advertise those games to their millions of viewers who would go and buy FNAF games themselves, like a machine. Similarly, the amount of lore packed into the series encouraged other content creators to feature these games on their channels. Creators like MatPat were sort of instrumental in the success of Five Nights at Freddy's, due to the amount of story material to explore. Leaving the game series so mysterious turned the franchise into an Easter egg hunt, which helped build up such a dedicated audience. And that's really the core for Five Nights' success. It has an incredibly dedicated audience. An audience that will buy all the games, consume all the content, and buy a lot of the merchandise. How these audiences are cultivated is always the million-dollar question. Major multi-billion-dollar companies spend money endlessly trying to market test characters that can be turned into cash cow IPs, hoping to be the next Mickey Mouse, the next Super Mario, the next Hello Kitty, or the next Pikachu. But for every one of those that's successful, there's a ton that fail. These types of IPs are lightning in a bottle, and that's what FNAF is. Maybe it's the simplicity of these animatronic characters. Ironically, when Scott tried making characters that were cute and lovable, they came off as creepy and off-putting. But when he intentionally designed them to be creepy, they also ended up partially endearing and likable. And that mixture of cute and creepy ended up being a sweet spot for merchandise. I mean, that's the Hot Topic brand. It's a style that resonates with Gen Z. It's childish, but not too childish. It's dark, but not too dark. It's horror, but it's not too violent. It captures a lot of the same charm that something like The Nightmare Before Christmas captured. It gets that 12+ or teen ESRB rating, so younger kids will still play it. But it's still dark enough to appeal to older teenagers and young adults. The movie wouldn't get the R rating like lots of other horror movies, and instead would easily fit into a much more profitable PG-13. Speaking of which, let's talk about Freddy Fazbear on the big screen. It really can't be overstated how much of a home run Blumhouse hit with the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, specifically because of all the factors working against it. Firstly, early reviews from critics were really negative. Then there's the fact that the marketing campaign seemed to be a bit of an afterthought with this movie. But the biggest nail in the movie's expected coffin was the fact that Universal decided to release the FNAF movie simultaneously on a streaming platform on day one, which is almost always a box office death sentence. But despite all that, Five Nights at Freddy's blew up that box office, becoming the biggest opening for Blumhouse in the studio's history, and it more than doubled the record for biggest Halloween weekend box office, opening to $80 million domestically and $137 million globally, all on a very modest $20 million budget. It's also clear, based on the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, that fans did not agree with critics. Not only did the movie make a ton of money, everybody seemed to love it. With so many variables working against the movie, its massive success really shows how unstoppable the franchise is. But let's talk about Scott Cawthon's life now. He still owns the Five Nights at Freddy's IP. His net worth is listed at $70 million, but that number is likely a huge understatement at this point. Much of that net worth factors in revenue, but with how profitable his franchise is, it's honestly hard to speculate on a valuation for his IP. For reference, Notch, the creator of Minecraft, sold that IP for $2.5 billion back in 2014. Given that everything FNAF touches turns to gold, who knows how much a major corporation would offer Cawthon for the Five Nights IP. One thing is for sure, the guy is clearly set for life, with generational wealth, and he seems to keep a low profile. Though back in 2021, he did face some backlash for his political donations, specifically supporting Donald Trump and other Republican politicians. One thing I have to respect is that when he decided to clarify his reasons for his political support, he stuck to his convictions and refused to apologize, stating, quote, "They want endless apologies and submission. People who are expecting those from me will get neither." Going on to declare himself a Republican, a Christian, and someone who is pro-life. Whether or not you agree with Scott's politics, this would be a good example of FU money. After the controversy, he chose to take a step back from the public eye. Although he hasn't formally retired, it seems like he's just enjoying life and spending time with his family. Though he's still clearly involved with the franchise, even writing the screenplay for the FNAF movie. And of course, owning the IP. Though maybe he will sell it. He's a middle-aged guy at this point and seems to want to spend more time with his loved ones. Regardless, the one takeaway from his success story is this. Everyone encounters moments of darkness similar to what Scott experienced. We may be tempted to quit, give up, and move on, and in some instances that may be the right choice. But sometimes, getting to the end of Night 5 is worth the risk of getting stuffed into an animatronic bear suit. We have to remember that we can only truly succeed if we persevere.